stopped in Manchuria or in Abyssinia, easiest of all in Spain. But that the present challenge was the most difficult of all to meet. France and Britain touched the frontiers neither of Austria nor Czechoslovakia as their fleets and lands touched both Abyssinia and Spain.
As I said, everything is quiet in Vienna tonight. There's a certain air of expectancy about the city, everyone waiting and wondering where and at what time Herr Hitler will arrive tomorrow. And we're planning to bring you an eyewitness account of Herr Hitler's entry into Vienna sometime tomorrow. We return you now to America.
From Berlin, we have heard Pierre J. Huss, International News Service Berlin correspondent, and then last of all from Vienna, Columbia's European director, Edward R. Merrill, has just spoken to us, which completes Columbia's tour of Europe's troubled capitals. And now in our studios in Washington, D.C., we're to hear now from the Honorable Louis B. Schwellenbach, Democratic Senator from the state of Washington. Soon, the increased armaments bill will be argued on the floor of the United States Senate, and as a member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, Senator Schwellenbach has a particular interest in any proposal affecting America's armament. As the United States looks toward Europe tonight, we listen to the opinions of Senator Louis B. Schwellenbach, and for that purpose, we take you now to Washington, D.C.
To the average American, the Nazi seizure of Austria demonstrates three things. First, the futility of contracts or treaties with dictator nations. No one can deny that Friday's invasion was a direct violation of the Berchtesgaden Agreement of February 12th. There, Hitler agreed with Schuschnigg on the independence of Austria. Certainly no one can deny to an independent state the right to conduct a plebiscite on a question of fundamental policy. Yet Schuschnigg's announcement of a plebiscite for today resulted in the seizure of Austrian control by Hitler. Second, it demonstrates that treaties signed at the point of a sword are worthless. This climaxes the series of violations of Versailles by Hitler. In no instance have the other signatories to Versailles even more than mildly protested. Third, and most important, it demonstrates the futility of war as an instrument for settling international controversies. 20 years ago, we were in the midst of a gigantic struggle to preserve democracy for the world. We gave our blood, our lives, our money, and our resources. 20 years later, we see the torch of world leadership being seized by the world's leading dictator. We cannot deny the fact that Adolf Hitler today is Europe's leader. We tremble at what he will do next. We know what will become of religious liberty in Austria, both for the Jews and the Catholics. It just will not exist. We know what will happen to freedom of speech and of the press. They will be suppressed. Democratic processes for 7 million Austrians are extinct. The probabilities are that he will press into Czechoslovakia, Romania, Hungary, and then on into the Ukraine. Events are moving rapidly in Europe these days. The old continental intrigue is too fast-moving for the average American to understand. England thought that by substituting the realistic actualities of Chamberlain for the idealism of Eden, she could stem the tide of the onslaught of the aggressive dictators. Just 2 weeks later, she found she was too late. Francis thought throughout the years that she could rely upon the steel ring which he had placed about Germany. She now faces its collapse. Even Mussolini looked with patronizing friendliness on his imitator. He now finds that the student has outgrown the master. What does this all add up to so far as America is concerned? Certainly disillusionment as to what can be accomplished by the instrument of war. We tried to preserve democracy in Europe once by going to war. We know now that that method does not work. I have been saddened by the events of these last 3 days, so saddened that I took solace in that source from which I always find comfort when it seems that the going is too rough to stand. I went to the essay of Emerson in which he said, and I quote, "This law writes the laws of cities and nations. It will not be balked of its end in the smallest iota. It is in vain to build or plot or combine against it. Things refuse to be mismanaged long. Though no checks to a new evil appear, the checks exist and will appear. Nothing arbitrary, nothing artificial can endure. Of all forms of government yet conceived, democracy furnishes the most useful agencies for fighting arbitrary and artificial mismanagement. What we must do is to protect and preserve democratic methods in America. No doubt we will be importuned again to spend our resources in a futile effort to correct conditions in Europe. The inevitable law of which Emerson speaks will take care of Europe. What we must do is to preserve American democratic processes to care for our own. History shows that democracies have disappeared when they fail to care for their own. Futility has ever been the nemesis of democracies. Never in the world's history has it been more necessary for democracy to work than it is for democracy to work here now. That we have an abundance of local problems, no one can deny. Quarrels exist between industry and labor in government. This is the time when these quarrels should be submerged for the general good. America's position must be consolidated. If the rest of the world wants to involve itself in a general brawl, that is its business. The permanent advance of civilization depends upon the successful maintenance of democratic institutions somewhere. That place should be here. Let us turn our hand to that task. Let no outside influences turn us from it.
The Honorable Louis B. Schwellenbach, Democratic member of the United States Senate from Washington, who is a member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, has presented America's view of the Austrian crisis. We return you to New York.
With world history tense in the greatest crisis in 24 years, the Columbia Network has brought to American citizens a summary of European opinion presented from the capitals of Europe by shortwave radio across the Atlantic Ocean. From London, we heard a member of the House of Parliament, Ellen C. Wilkinson. From Paris, Edgar Maurer, veteran correspondent of the Chicago Daily News. From Berlin, International News Service correspondent Pierre J. Huss. From Vienna, Edward R. Murrow, Columbia's European director. And finally, to summarize opinion in our own capital city, United States Senator Louis B. Schwellenbach has just finished speaking to you from Washington, D.C. This broadcast from 5 world capitals has been a presentation of Columbia's Department of Special Events, which will continue to cover the European situation, bringing you special broadcasts and bulletins as fresh news arrives on this side of the ocean. Tonight at 10:30 Eastern Standard Time, Columbia presents its regular Sunday night news broadcast, Headlines and Bylines, which tonight will include the latest summaries at that hour. Bob Trout speaking. This is the Columbia Broadcasting System.
Okay, so that was, I thought, very interesting, and I wanted to bring it to you guys, give you an opportunity to really look at history. And I was watching this series called Downton Abbey. It's on, I think I watched it on Amazon. And it was really good. Really, really good. Really gave you a glimpse into England at a certain period. And in that period, they actually included the First World War. And the angst and the sacrifice, it was really educational about what people were, where they were at a certain point, in time. And so, for me, it parallels, because I find a lot of people on the left, and I'm anti-war, but I found a lot of people on the left really parallel where people were in England or in Europe at that time, that they didn't want to go to war. And they didn't want to go to war so bad that they let Hitler get away with stuff that they wouldn't have let him get away with if there hadn't been the First World War. So we see from history, and then even from, what we just finished listening to, is that people were like, you can't trust him. A lot of people are saying that about Putin. You know, you can't trust him. So we had who? Bush, and Obama. I know that did the whole Great Reset, you know, with Russia, saying that they were going to work with Putin, and then it ended up not working. It's not going to work. Russia and China are allied. I want you guys to look up BRICS. BRICS. And I want to say it's Brazil, Russia, India, China. Is it South America? I have to look that up. But I want you guys to look up BRICS. And those are the nations that have actually come together and said that they're going to work with each other. A lot of people are not paying attention to that alliance. And I understand that it's going to be very important in our future. So one of the things I saw in the news this week is that Russia and China have met at the Olympics. And China said that they're going to support Russia and what they got going on, and they condemned America for the saber rattling, you know, that they feel that this country, you know, is doing. And then Russia said that they're going to support China if the U.S. interferes with what's going on with Taiwan. Very important, very relevant. I also want to talk about the difference between how people felt about war and what war turned into. War has now turned into a business. And if you know anything about capitalism, and I'm going to talk about capitalism a lot, you know, in the coming, you know, times. Capitalism will function no matter what. And if we don't do something to rein it in, then we're all, globally, we're all going to be affected by capitalism in the worst kinds of ways. Capitalism doesn't care about colonialism. They will use whatever means necessary in order to keep capital alive and to keep it thriving. So it's up to people to decide how far they're going to let capital push them and turn them into something that is the opposite of human, where you're willing to watch people die and you're willing to kill people in order to get that banana, in order to be able to have sugar, in order to be able to have that electric vehicle, you know, in order to be able to get Bitcoin, you know. A lot of people don't understand the origins of what is happening in our markets. You think that it's just something benign, but it is actually something that's impacting the lives of people every day. So when you listen to people like Kyle Kalinske, there's a debate he just had with Vosh the other day. I want to say it was this week. So if I can post it in the description, I will do that. And I want you guys to really listen to the conversation, you know, that they're having, and then go back and actually go listen, if you need to what we just heard, you know, from this World War II, you know, footage. So it's really important for us to keep history in context. I know a lot of people like Kyle, they hear Hitler and their ears shut down. People are bringing this kind of stuff up because it needs to be brought up. You need to always be able to be willing to go back and look. I mean, people actually may be making, you know, a point. Kyle finally came around to, you know, some things that people were talking about with Trump when he wanted to have that photo op in front of the church. And he, you know, sent the police out there on peaceful protesters. So this kind of stuff is really important. You can't just dismiss it because it's something that's inconvenient for you to want to think about. So I'm going to end it here, and then I'm going to pick it up on the next video. Thank you for your time and attention.